to this third info session for MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific's applications for 2026. My name is Frederick Nabig. I'm the Managing Director for MedTech Innovator APAC based here in Singapore. With me is our APAC team as well, and you will meet some of them later on this morning. Good evening to those of you dialing in from elsewhere around the world, or good morning to those of you dialing in early. This is going to be an information session focused primarily on Australia and for Australian applicants. But the information here you will find is equally relevant whether you're dialing in from South Korea or from Japan or from Singapore or from North America or Europe. I think there'll be something for everyone here. We'll talk about the application process and we'll talk about the benefits of being part of the program. But I'm particularly excited to introduce to you our two speakers this morning. So we have AJ Nair here from the Mullings Group, longtime partner of MedTech Innovator. He has been a reviewer, a judge, a mentor, a masterclass facilitator, and you'll hear from him and Glenn a little bit later on this morning. We're also honored to have Oliver Bazzani here, co-director from Perth Biodesign, who will tell us a bit more about the Biodesign organization. So let me just very quickly take you through the agenda. We'll begin by having Oliver walk us through the Perth Biodesign and the Australia Biodesign organization and what it does. I will then spend a few minutes introducing you to MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific, what the program entails, some of the key milestones and activities that you can expect in 2026. And my colleague Glenn will then do a fireside chat with AJ Nair at the Mullings Group, who will tell us more about the mentoring process, being a judge, and running masterclasses. And of course, we'll take your questions along the way. So if you're a webinar participant, you can queue up your question using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, or you are welcome to write into us as well, and we'll address any questions you may have. So, with that, let me hand over to Oliver. He'll share his screen. I should just say that we've had a long partnership with Biodesign globally, starting, of course, in Stanford. Every year, many of you might be aware that we at JP Morgan, we do a joint reception together with Stanford Biodesign, with partner with Biodesign, Singapore Biodesign, Japan Biodesign, of course, Biodesign Australia as well. And we've had multiple companies and startups come through Biodesign and have been part of the MedTech Innovator program. We had most recently Pretech Devices that were in our 2025 cohort. So I'm delighted to hand over to Oliver to tell us more about the organization and why you should pay attention to them. Oliver.
Thanks so much, Frederick.
I'll stop my screen share. You're welcome to share yours.
There we go. Is that coming through?
It is.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Frederick and team, for the opportunity to share a little bit more about Biodesign Australia and why we partner with MedTech Innovator. I'm really excited to be a ongoing partner with the great work that the team does. So we exist as Biodesign Australia to train the next generation of innovators to solve important problems in healthcare through technology innovation. As Frederick mentioned, this methodology was born at Stanford just over 25 years ago. And through this process, we've been able to see huge impact around the world. First and foremost, most importantly, over 18 million patients impacted worldwide, $1.25 billion in funding raised. But the figure that I think is really interesting is looking at the number of companies formed and how they're tracking in terms of the amount of those that are active, have been acquired. I mean, a very small percentage of those that are inactive. Prior to my self getting involved in the health tech space, I did some work in the early stage investing world. And seeing these figures was actually the first spike that really interested me to look at biodesign some more, because they were far beyond what I'd seen in the typical venture space, and was excited to hear, being in Singapore last week, or a few weeks ago now, for the MedTech Innovator final event, that there was some similar, if not higher, metrics around the companies that have been through MedTech Innovator, which is fantastic to see. So we get to benefit from this biodesign approach that has been proven over many years, and we brought it over to Australia. But taking a step back, I think it's useful to think about, well, why is it having this level of success? And for me, the secret is the fact that we start inside the hospital itself, where a lot of people and a lot of innovators begin perhaps with the idea. We obsessively spend time thinking about that problem space and that clinical unmet need months before we allow anyone to even think about ideas. So we're partnered with hospitals across Australia where we send our teams in, they go into surgery, they meet the doctors, the nurses, and the patients, and they're just looking for the right problems to solve. They typically come out of that experience with a few hundred problems that they found, and we help them filter that down to the very best one before they ultimately look to the invention stage. The other part that's really interesting about biodesign is it welcomes people from all backgrounds. So we have this problem at the center, but it's not just clinicians and biomedical engineers that we bring into this mix. We bring professionals from all different backgrounds. People that might be from a design or a research or an engineering background, but also Frederick mentioned pre-tech devices before, who went through MedTech Innovator. Nipanyana's got a space background initially, doing some really interesting engineering work in the astrology and astronomy world before bringing that into the health tech aspect. And so through this mix, we get some really interesting and novel innovations that come to life. As was mentioned before, it's not just Stanford and us in Australia. It's amazing in that we get to benefit with peers from across this global network of biodesign innovators. Why does that matter? It helps these innovations grow and be able to learn from these really unique geographies, but also be able to understand the unique needs in each of these geographies from a global expansion perspective, which is really impactful when we get to implementation. Within our own biodesign ecosystem, we have our flagship programs that I've referenced before that are all about seeding new innovations. It's that very early 0 to 1 stage. And that's why we're really excited to partner people with MedTech Innovator who can take them to that next stage beyond that. We also have programs such as the Australian Clinical Entrepreneur Program, which we help seed, and that's supporting clinicians to make the leap into that innovation role. And also APAC, which plays a really important role in supporting PhDs and this highly technical talent to join startups and solve some of the really challenging R&D problems that they might have. And so we place these teams of PhDs that we work with alongside industry to solve some of these really hard problems for startups that are growing. For us ourselves, our teams have raised over $80 million. I think that's a little bit outdated now. They've created 26 medical technologies, but most excitingly, we have over 1,000 alumni across Australia, some of those that are going on to start companies, but also importantly, they're joining other companies as early hires, as operators, as clinical experts and key opinion leaders to really help them grow and go to that next level. We have this pipeline, as I mentioned, and there's Nipanyana there, and you can see some other familiar faces, such as Kath Giles, who has also been through MedTech Innovator, I believe, in the US, before we had APAC. But really what we're showing here is this pipeline of companies that we're bringing from that identify phase through to global impact. And you can see we typically skew quite early, and that's where we look to work with partners to really then help them take to that next stage. It's not just for Australia, though, it's really for the world. So this is one of our portfolio companies, Earflow. They're pioneering the first non-invasive at-home treatment to treat OME or glue ear. to prevent developmental delay earlier and avoid surgery for children who would typically get grommets. And just in the past month, they took out Time's Best Invention lists of 2025. They also then took out the Best Innovation in Digital Health at CES. And today they've just won another award this morning. So this is really to show that it's not just Australian innovation for Australia. We're really seeing Australia and APAC as a launch pad to global impact. Ultimately, we see this create some great ideas where we can then work with partners like MedTech Innovator to accelerate them, which enables us to build culture change within our health systems, develop more talent, and then compound this flywheel effect. And I think we're starting to see this play out really quite quickly in Australia, but more broadly across the APAC region. So we're seeing significant venture dollars flowing into this space and significant impact growing from there. So thank you for the opportunity to share a bit about Biodesign Australia. We're really excited about the impact that we're able to have collectively, and excited to be able to have more biodesign companies accelerating their impact through MedTech Innovator in the future. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Oliver, for that. We, as Oliver just mentioned, we're thrilled to partner with not just Perth Biodesign, but the biodesign initiatives across the globe, particularly because it's such a good fit. The companies that come in through the biodesign program have the very, very solid fundamentals as they enter into the MedTech Innovator program. So thanks again for that. Let me just say that you do not have to, of course, if you're an applicant, you do not have to have gone through the biodesign program. If you have, that's great. You'll have a number of alumni and peers that have gone through the program as well. But obviously it is not mandatory. Typically, we work with slightly later stage companies, and therefore companies that have gone through a program like this, like the biodesign program, stand to benefit a great deal as they scale and move on to the next level. So with that, let me talk a little bit more about MedTech Innovator and what we do before we go into our fireside chat with AJ Nair. So MedTech Innovator is officially, according to US bank analysts, the world's largest global competition and accelerator for traditional medical devices, digital health, and in vitro diagnostics. We're entirely industry-led, so the logos at the bottom of this screen are some of our corporate partners that we work with, either locally in Asia Pacific or across the globe in the US as well as in APAC. This is a photograph taken at our grand finals, I believe, a year ago, or slightly more than that, where we bring our cohort participating companies together for the grand finals event in Singapore. We'll share the photos with you in a moment of the event that Oliver referenced that happened just a couple of weeks ago here. So we'll share some metrics too, and I think Oliver referenced some of these just earlier. If you look at the right hand side of the screen, globally, we currently have 838 alumni companies that have gone through the MedTech Innovator program, either in APAC or in the US. 93% of those companies are still in business or have been acquired, which is quite an extraordinary number. They've gone on to raise well over $10 billion in follow-on equity. We've had 60 outright acquisitions. We had an acquisition in Asia Pacific just about a year ago, in December of 2024, when a Vietnamese, Hanoi Vietnamese-based company in our 2024 cohort was acquired outright by NVIDIA. Typically 1 in 3 or 35, slightly more, 35% of our applicants generate revenue, but if you are earlier stage, that's absolutely fine. And 1 in 4 of all global investment dollars in 2024, in fact, went to MedTech Innovator alumni companies. We do run 2 programs, as you'll see on the left here. We run our US traditional MedTech Innovator program, where we have a lot more applicants. And that is primarily for companies that are headquartered in the US, or for whom the US market is their number one priority. The Asia Pacific program was set up in 2019, primarily for companies that are headquartered in Asia Pacific, because everything that we do during the program, webinar sessions, other interactions, meetings, and so on, of course, are on East Asian time zones. But it is also open to companies that may be based outside of Asia Pacific, so long as you have a strategic interest in APAC. So you may be working on an Asian prevalent disease. You may have a investor or a CDMO partner in Asia. If so, you're most welcome to still join and apply to the APAC program. Won't go through this in detail. You'll find more information about this on our website. But I just wanted to say that in terms of development stages, and you'll see this on the right-hand side of the screen, most of our applicants are preclinical, clinical, or just before regulatory approval. The funding stages typically are seed and Series A. We do accept applicants across all funding stages, although typically, if you have just spun out of university, you do not yet have a legal entity set up, and you haven't really raised any money to speak of, it might be a bit too early for you to apply. Anyone else is more than welcome. We have a growing number of participating companies, even at Series B and C. So long as you've not gone public or been acquired, you are welcome to apply. As you can see here on the left, we have in Asia Pacific alone 154 alumni companies so far, and they've gone on to raise well over $220 million. This is what the annual cycle looks like. So we are now in end of November, beginning of December. This is when applications come in, and they will then be reviewed through our network of reviewers. We have about 100 to 120 of those across APAC. They will go through, typically we have 500 to 600 applications every year. They will identify the top 60 that will then get invited to pitch. So we run our pitch events between March through to May. We will have 2 virtual pitch events and 2 in-person pitch events in 2026. Talk a bit more about that in a moment. Once those companies have pitched, we typically get to about May. That is when we will work with our corporate partners to select the best 20 that will get invited to join our 4-month accelerator. At the end of the accelerator, we select 4 or 5 companies that will compete for the grand prize, and we give away $175,000 in funding to a single company. There's a total of about $300,000 worth of awards that we give out at the end of the program. These are some of the parameters that our reviewers and our judges will look at as they evaluate applicants. So do take a look at these. You'll find these on our website as well. I believe you'll find them under the FAQ section. So take a look at this as you begin your application. It will broadly be divided into different sections that will address each of these points. So looking at the milestones for 2026 in a little bit more detail, the second bullet here, the road tour, the pitch events, we do have the dates for these, so you can take a note of them here. As you apply, you will indicate your preference as to whether you'd like to pitch online either on the 5th of March or the 2nd of April, or if you would like to pitch in person. We have 2 in-person events in 2026. We're pleased to just have announced our partnership with the Korean government. So we're working with KIDI, and Korean-based medtech startups are welcome to join our pitch event in Seoul on the 19th to 20th of March. Everyone else who would like to pitch in person is welcome to join us in Singapore on the 14th to 15th of April. But as I said, you do have the option to pitch online if you are unable to travel. So at the end of the pitch event, we will then select the cohort. They will get notification from us, typically sometime in mid to probably early May this year, if not late April, to give you enough time to book your ticket and join us in Mountain View, California, just south of San Francisco, where we will run our Innovator Summit. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. The Accelerator program itself is 4 months. It is a virtual program. You do not need to relocate for this, but it is bookended by 2 in-person events. It kicks off, as I mentioned, in Silicon Valley, and it concludes at our grand finals event in Singapore at the end of October. So these are some of the photos from our past road tour. As you'll see, some of these are online events. Some of them are in-person events. We do not follow the traditional pitch format where every company invited pitches to every judge. We have a large number of judges, typically many more judges than we have companies presenting. And we make sure that the judges only meet the companies they want to meet. So we run up to 8, sometimes 10 company pitches in parallel for different groups of judges. It's a bit of a unique formula, but it works extremely well. And as a participating company, even if you don't get selected to join the cohort, you will get quality feedback from those judges and from those interactions. We spoke about the kickoff meeting in Mountain View, California, and this will take place on the 3rd to the 5th of June, 2026. This is where all of our cohorts around the world come together, not just from Asia Pacific, but also from our US cohort, as well as our BioTools Innovator cohort. So we expect typically around 1,100 participants over 3 days. We also invite our alumni to join this event. So for those of you who've gone through the program and or thinking about what the future will be like as a possible alum, you are then welcome to join us and come back and join us as part of our alumni faculty and conduct workshops and interact with our current year's cohort. So the Accelerator has 2 key components. One is our educational curriculums. We do a series of educational webinars. You'll see much more information about these, and you can actually view some of the past webinars online if you go to our website. This will cover a broad range of topics. Typically what we do is we will survey the cohort companies at the beginning of the program so that it is tailored specifically to the pain points of that particular cohort. The topics may range from fundraising to working with strategics to developing global regulatory strategies, managing clinical trials, running hospital pilots, and of course, commercialization. We'll speak more about mentorship in a moment when Glenn will talk to AJ. And we'll get some more specific examples of what that entails. But we are privileged to have a broad number of senior executives that are mentoring the companies in the cohort. Each company has at least 1 mentor. In some cases, some startups will have 2 or even 3 mentors. And the mentors are either from our corporate partners or from our many service provider partners or ecosystem partners. So this kind of summarizes the support that we provide throughout the Accelerator program. I spoke about the educational curriculum. I spoke briefly about the mentorship, and Glenn will speak more about that. In addition, we provide resources that includes things like pitch book access, access to our open rounds online platform where you can post any open rounds of fundraising that you are currently undergoing, and that will our network of investors globally will have access to that platform. Of course, the community is key, and many of the startups at the end of the program, they say that in addition to the mentoring and everything else, it was really that community and the ecosystem and the relationships that they developed throughout the program that became extremely meaningful as they graduate and move on to do other things. And the majority of our alumni, they keep in touch with their peers well after the program. We do not charge an application fee. So for those of you who are participating or thinking of applying, there is no application fee that you have to pay to be part of this. You do not have to give up equity to apply. You are welcome to just begin your application, and Glenn will talk more about how to do that in a moment. We're also indifferent to where you are geographically based. So we have applicants every year from places like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Mongolia, but of course also from New Zealand, Australia, South Korea, Taiwan, Estonia, UK, Switzerland, North America. So you can be based anywhere and apply to the MedTech Innovator programs. You have a choice either to apply to our US program or to our Asia Pacific program. Again, I'll just wrap up with a few photographs from our recent grand final session in Singapore, as well as some of the sessions that you'll see here at the bottom of our screen, interactions with our judges through some of the in-person pitch events, as well as some of the workshops and the workshop format you'll see that we run at the Innovator Summit in the lower right-hand corner. And interestingly, our grand prize winner for 2025 was in fact an Australian company, Australia Scientific, and we have Nikki here with Paul Grand, our CEO, and last year's grand prize winner, Mark Chang from A-Prevent, based out of Taiwan. So Nikki walked away with $175,000, and he is working on a non-invasive neuromodulation therapy technology to treat overactive bladder. Amazing technology. And if you have never heard of Australia Scientific, I encourage you to look them up. So very exciting technology indeed, but all of the runner-ups were really first-class companies. This is the photograph that was taken 2 weeks ago when we wrapped up our 2025 cohort. We had the pleasure of having Oliver there, and AJ, of course, was there as well. And all of our cohort companies flew into Singapore for this event and had the opportunity to meet with corporate partners, our ecosystem partners, as well as a number of our alumni. So with that, I will hand over to Glenn, who will tell you a bit more about the application process for 2026. Glenn.
Thank you so much, Frederick. So my name is Glenn Lim. I am the Senior Program Director at MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific. I'm just going to go through, I think, what to expect when you submit the applications in our application system. And then shortly after that, I will invite AJ from the Mullings Group, a partner of the MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific program, to then join me for a short fireside chat where we will share with you a little bit more on, for example, how do we do the judging with AJ as a long-time judge of the program, as well as certain key aspects like the mentorship or even the educational webinars. And I think that will give you a different flavor from another perspective on, I think, some of the benefits from our program that we try to give to all the cohort startups in collaboration with our partners itself. So applications are officially open for our 2026 programs, with the deadline for application being the 1st of December. So all you need to do is really scan this QR code to apply through the MedTech Innovator applications portal. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at apacsupport@medtechinnovator.org, or visit our website for more information itself. Now, the next slide, yes, we'll share you a little bit more information about what the application portal looks like. You can, or you will be asked to sign in to an account. And if you don't have one, all you need to do is create one with your company email, and you can tag your company directly to your email address later on as well. Multiple people can work on the exact same application from your company. All you need to do is just add them into the system itself. If you have already previously submitted an application last year, you can actually retrieve that application, and instead of starting all the way from scratch again, you can just make edits to strengthen your application through the portal itself. And of course, on step 3, I think before you fill in your details, just remember to select the MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific Accelerator Program, as we do run quite a number of our programs throughout the whole year itself. All right. If you have any questions, I think feel free to reach out to us and we'll be glad to assist you further. So once again, the application QR code, which I think we will also include in the chat itself. Great. Thank you so much, Frederick. It is really my pleasure to now welcome AJ Nair, partner of the Mullins Group, to join me in a fireside chat to talk a little bit more about the program and how the Mullins Group really works with MedTech Innovator throughout the whole year itself. Thanks, Frederick. Maybe we want to just unshare the screen real quick. And I can invite AJ to share a little bit more about yourself and what you do at the Mullins Group.
Thanks, Glenn. Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Frederick, for the kickoff as well. Hi, everyone. I'm a recurrent fan of the MedTech Innovator program and trying to embed myself more and more in it. So I'll give a little background on myself. I'm pretty much a long-term executive in the med device world. Started my career in the U.S. About 11 years in the U.S. with companies like J&J, Medtronic, heavily on the commercial side. I started my career as a sales rep, all the way up to P&L leader. And then from about 2011, my career has been entirely the APAC region. So I've lived in China, India, Singapore, again, with increasing roles of P&L responsibility. About 3 years ago, stepped away from the corporate train, started working for myself as a consultant and heavily then focused with young medtech and scale-up organizations, where I wanted to sort of cohesively share all that corporate experience that I had and kind of give back to companies. So again, my expertise is heavily in the commercial scale and advisory. And then I also, about 2.5 years ago, became a senior partner for a US executive search firm that, again, works exclusively with medtech, med device companies. So done quite a bit. And now I'm, ensconced in Singapore and Australia and help medtech companies as best as I can see fit.
No, thank you so much, JJ. I think it's always a pleasure to have you with us. And I think just for audience as well, if you have any questions, I think just feel free to include your questions either in the Q&A function or the chat, and we will get to that very quickly at the end of the fireside chat itself. Okay. But I think maybe we can talk very importantly on 3 of the phases that we work very closely with partners like the Mullins Group and yourself, right? And I think the first phase is really once the 500 to 600 applications have been reviewed by hundreds of our reviewers, with AJ being one of those reviewers, we essentially will then select 60 companies to pitch either through the online pitch event or one of our physical pitch events itself. So if you're a Korean company, join us in South Korea in March. And if you are not a South Korean company and you would like to join our physical pitch event, that will be 14th and 15th of April. Now, 30 companies, 30, will then be selected to pitch physically to meet judges like AJ, right? And representatives from our strategic partners like Johnson & Johnson, B. Braun, as well as hospital and academia partners as well. Now, for every 30 companies that we have present at the physical pitch event, we typically have about 50 judges, and the judges will select all the companies that they want to see. And I think we run it very different from a demo day. So I actually wanted to ask AJ in this sense, right? I think you've been a judge at many accelerator programs. What is maybe your observation from a judge at MedTech Innovator pitch events, and maybe what advice would you give to companies to get to that particular stage, right? What catches your eye as an experienced professional in space?
Yeah, great question, Glenn. Look, in a nutshell, and there's no one size fits all, right? But what I use, and this sort of evolves through stages of MedTech Innovator as well. And I sort of give companies the benefit of the doubt that they are also evolving through the accelerator program. So at first stage, I would say one of the things that I really look for is, what's the story? I mean, why is a company really coming to this position? What's the need that they're trying to solve? I mean, it sounds very cliche, but that is a fact. It's the depth of the story. It's how the solution is being sort of evolved out of that need. And then how is this company trying to bring that solution, product, whatever it may be, to market? Now, at the first stage, I'm not really grilling a company on the quality of their business plan. I'm not looking at their projections. I'm not looking at their pricing strategy, because to me, a lot of those things kind of get evolved through the program. And that's the whole point of an accelerated program like MedTech Innovator. But at least at first stage, I look at that need, solution, and then I really do start looking at the quality of the team and the passion behind the team. So maybe those are the three things. But Glenn, to add, as we go through the program and as we mature through it, obviously, as we get to the tailor end of it, it is important to start seeing the quality of the business plan, how, whichever market you're entering, what is your strategy? How are you prioritizing? Because one of the biggest things we look for is founder focus or C-suite focus, right? A company that's trying to do way too many things, often judges are like, you just really need to come down to a cohesive strategy. So my point here is, there's a certain element of what we look at in the beginning of the intake, and then it needs to mature as you're kind of going towards that final stage.
Yeah, and I think it's also a issue of or rather a question of the different medium that is involved, right? Because at the review stage, when we have 600 over companies, it's a lot of information, and you want to make sure that you are showcasing a clear solution for a clear need that you're addressing, right? And of course, the clearer you are able to I think put this in words through the application platform, I think the easier it is for reviewers like AJ to notice you. But I think like what AJ has mentioned, when you are here physically in Singapore or online through Zoom, you really need to change that strategy to really showcase a little bit more about your company, and of course the person that's pitching is really, really important as well.
Yeah, and one, if I may make a plug, just for the way, one of the things that I like the way MedTech Innovator does this is, and this is more so for future applicants, one of the things that MTI APAC does really well is ask the reviewers and the judges what areas of specialty they have background in or they have an affinity for. For example, my corporate career came heavily from cardiac, orthopedics, and then I may have an affinity for AI type solutions, but I don't consider myself a subject matter expert. But what I like about MTA APAC is they will always categorize companies based on my interest or my expertise. So my point here is, for applicants, MTI APAC does a great job of making sure that the right experts are reviewing your company and your specialty or your industry, not just let's say somebody who's a CFO is now looking at a cardiac technology. I mean, they try their best to match, which I think is a great service that MTI APAC does.
No, I great point, AJ. It's something I wanted to bring up as well. And that's essentially at the physical judging arena, you will definitely get to meet judges that have specifically chosen your company and your technology to judge, because they have that deep domain expertise and is able to give you that kind of feedback, right? So we have at companies, and I think maybe AJ has also seen some of these companies where they have pitched, for example, last year in the 2024 program, but didn't get in, but really took the comments that the judges have given them and came back stronger in 2025 and pitched again. And a good company for this is actually our webinar that we did last week with Osteolabs from Thailand. It's the third time they applied, I think, and they really went through the trouble of flying to Singapore and understanding what does the industry really think about my product and my technology, right? And work on that. And I think it's judges like AJ that will give you that feedback very truthfully sometimes to really help you along your journey of being a startup founder in a healthcare company itself. Any major tips to add, AJ, for a company that's been selected to judge, for example? To
Yeah,
be judged.
and using the Ausiolabs example, maybe I'll start with that.
Did you judge them this year?
Yeah, and I was really proud to see them as part of the Final Four. That was
Yes.
what a journey, right? I mean, it feels like a soccer World Cup story or something like that. But yeah, it's the comment that I wanted to start with, based on what Glenn said. Founders or founding teams, you've got to be able to take feedback, and you've got to really be able to take active feedback, right? Not just yeah, they don't understand what I'm doing, so I don't really need this feedback. The way, using Ausiolabs as an example, the way they evolved over 2 years based on the feedback they were given, the way they really refined their business story, they had a much sharper strategy as to how they're taking over their home market and how they're going into an international market. By the way, the space that they play in is an incredibly difficult space, and they really fine-tuned how they're going to plan to enter it. I mean, these are all good, the company's CEO and the BD individual, they all took good feedback and sort of evolved. So going back to Glenn's question on tips, look, I think we broadly, and I'm just kind of packaging this, but there's obviously multiple factors, but broadly we look at how good is the quality of the solution that you're bringing to market. One of the things that we really look at is the credentials of the leadership team. Now, you don't have to have all of the key leaders in place, but the people that you have, we're looking at what expertise do you bring, or what passion do you bring, or what academic certs do you bring that gives you gravitas. Because understand, as you mature through the process, investors, whether they're angel, institutional, they're starting to look at, is the foundational team qualified enough to take this through the finish line? Right? So that's a huge thing. We look at the quality of the leadership team. Then, of course, we look at the business strategy. I mean, that's yes, it will be refined over time, but you got to have the essentials there. And the further along you are, I mean, quoting Australis, the winner this year, one of the things that Nicky really understood was the US pricing and reimbursement. Like, he knew it inside and out. And so that gave him such confidence about how to sort of gain traction in the market that you really couldn't compete with him. And then the last element I would say is, where are you going with this company, right? Have a clear idea of what do you need in terms of raise? How are you facilitating milestones? Very, very important, right? Don't ask for 5 million and go, we want to get to US entry, but you don't really know how far the 5 million will take you. So just understanding the ask, and built into that is, how can the MTI APAC program help you? One of the other companies I want to quote is Hematag. They're also a US company, came into MTI APAC, but had a very clear idea of how the MTI APAC accelerator was going to help them. So these are some of the broad elements that I would advise people.
No, good advice. So I think everyone that's watching this, you will get golden tips on how to do better in your applications, and if you're selected, how to do better in your pitches as well. But that leads me very nicely to the next part of the program, right? So after the companies have been selected, 60 companies that pitch, we will select 20 companies to be part of the accelerator program. And as part of the main accelerator program itself, where we do that kickoff at Mountain View, California, when you guys come back home from that summit, we will then essentially allocate you suitable mentors based on each individual cohort company's needs, right? So we'll jump on a call with each and every company to understand what you need help with, and then we'll reach out to partners like the Munnings Group or Johnson & Johnson to be able to find most relevant and suitable mentors to you. And they are not geographically locked. So AJ, for example, has mentored companies from Australia and Singapore, where he's based. But I think in 2025, he has also mentored FMed, a Japanese company that's based in Japan as well. So it's really, I would say, diverse where our mentors are, and we have roughly about 39 mentors for the 20 companies that are in the accelerator program itself. So I'm going to take this chance to ask AJ, what did you maybe what are the areas that you believe you were able to help some of these companies, and why do you mentor them? And just, I think, for sake of transparency on everyone on the call, we do not pay any of our mentors. They do this because they want to. And now you get to hear firsthand on why they do it.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Look, the why is probably more important for me, right? I believe I've been very privileged to work for the J&Js and the Medtronics of the world, and that too, I've had an international career that spanned multiple countries. So for me, the why is always very simple. If I can give back even 1/10 of the knowledge that I've gained, and that helps someone achieve a milestone or think differently, or is a catalyst on their path, I mean, I would do it in a heartbeat, right? And this year, initially when Glenn said, would you be interested in mentoring 4 companies? My default answer is always yes, right? And then I sort of walk away going, wait, how much time is that? But it was actually really, really, really an enjoyable experience. I had 4 very different companies, robotics, 2 in heart failure, and then the maxillofacial, the 3D printing software kind of business. So very different. So I guess my second why is I probably learned way more mentoring than I do in giving. But for me to have my finger on the pulse, for me to understand where technology is going in industry, meeting cutting edge founders and really understanding why they're doing what they're doing, that multiplies my learning as well, right? And so yeah, I mean those are my real takeaways from the why, and I think where I was able to help, Glenn, your first part of your question is I really kind of pressure test on, number one, why do you feel the solution is the best out there, or viable, maybe is a better word. I really push companies to understand the landscape, the competitive landscape, because if you don't understand your competition, even if you feel you're pioneering, there's always a competitor, right? So you've got to really understand that. And then probably the third element where I help the most is I really hammer people on commercial strategy, because and in a way, I'm kind of being sadistic here, but if I come from that area, i.e. cardiac, and I know what it's like to launch in the US or other markets, and you don't, I'm definitely going to be coming down hard going, why do you feel like, have you spoken to people? Have you gotten voice of customer? Do you have reimbursement research? So really my intention, I mean, I do mentor companies a little bit hard at times, but the intention is, at least in mentoring, I want you to be really, really sure in working out the kinks, so that when you're on stage, you are better than your competition, right? So that's really my intention, is really pressure testing companies to come out with the best product.
And I think that's a really, really good example. And thank you for your many years of service, AJ. But I think to our audience, I think that's a really good example of what to expect during the mentorship program itself. We select our mentors very, very carefully. And our mentors are, I would say, very similar to AJ. They don't do this because they're getting paid by MedTech Innovator. They're doing this because they really want to help you guys, and we'll be able to offer that kind of, I think, value to you as well. Right. And of course, I think, AJ, you come with a particular skill set that we work very closely with you on as part of our educational webinar series as well. So on top of the mentorship program that lasts from July to October, during that same period in July to October, every Thursday from, if I'm not wrong, 10 a.m. to 11:30 in the mornings, we will essentially run a 10-part series or 10-part educational webinar series itself, where we will understand from each and every cohort company where are some of your pain points, and really put down a 10 webinar powerhouse series itself. And one of those topics that frequently turn up, aside from how to fundraise and speak to investors, reimbursement, pricing, hospital pilots, and all that, is really how to grow your company via good talent acquisitions, right? And the Mullings Group is really the partner that we work with for this particular webinar itself. So maybe tell us a little bit more about, maybe one is, what do you cover as part of the webinar, and maybe why do you do that as well?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I always kind of lead with, and perhaps I was this way when I was in industry as well. I always used to think of talent as an afterthought, right? Talent was something that you needed when the need was emergent. And as a GM or as a sales director or something, we would only hire when we lost someone or when we were creating an opening or opening a market or something like that. It was always an afterthought. And I think when I joined the Mullings Group about 2.5 years ago, Mullings Group is very, very strong in US and Europe. I built out their APAC franchise, and they're extremely good at advisory, partnership, and then talent happens to be what we do. So what's really interesting is I work with a lot of young companies in teaching them, you got to have a hypothesis of what your company is going to look like in 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. If you act as, when funding comes, we'll figure it out, oftentimes it's very late in terms of your strategy. And oftentimes, founders know this extremely well. When you're pitching, investors are asking, what are you doing with this money? How are you investing this money? If you say you're entering the US, the number one question they're going to have is, well, who's running your business in the US? Right? So often talent needs to be a forethought, not an afterthought. And so that's really where I think we at the Mullings Group help tremendously. And that's why we partner with organizations like MTI APAC, because at some point, our goal is to teach founders that you need to be thinking about building your company, scaling your company. And this comes with people. People are the pivotal aspect of any growth, right? So we sort of teach founders, have an idea of an org design. You don't have to execute it, but at least having that map, then understand that several markets, like the US as an example, you have to be very scientific about how you deploy capital, right? You may just hire a leader. I mean, US salaries versus Asia are 3-4 times in just base salaries. If you make that kind of investment coming out of an Asia foundation, you're going to burn money so fast without a clear idea of what your org design looks like. So a lot of our work is really there. Strategic deployment of capital, understanding what your org design looks like, and making sure that that organization, wherever you build, is efficiently returning on your business plan. So that's the talent side of the work that we do.
And I think Asia has given a really good summary on a 2-minute snapshot of what the 1-hour webinar will really cover, and that's really the essence of it, right? But I think what AJ has mentioned, I think also very clearly reflects why MedTech Innovator does what we do, and why we make our webinar sessions public as well. And it's that heart to help companies like you grow. And of course, being a part of the cohort will then allow you a 30-minute golden period in time from 11 to 11:30 on all our webinar series to ask our webinar speakers that are as experienced as AJ specific questions on your business that are related to that particular topic itself. And that's not a benefit that we give to the wider general public audience as well. So it's a good chance to pick his brain, and of course we'll share over his email after those types of webinars, and you will then get to have a direct interaction with him as well. So if you already have AJ as a mentor, I think congratulations to you. It's an additional topic you can talk about during the mentorship itself. But if it's not, I think it's also a good chance to really deep dive into the expertise that mentors, that speakers like AJ bring to the main program itself as well. Of course, as part of the main webinar series, where we try to cover the topic very broadly, so that companies across the multitude of stages will be able to benefit. During our grand finals in late October in Singapore, We will work with partners like the Bunnings Group to run deep dive masterclasses, where he can really get into the nitty-gritty of strategy, to really help companies like you grow itself. All right. Any final maybe comments from AJ before we take questions from the audience real quick?
Yeah, maybe just one, Glenn. Look, I think why I think MedTech Innovator APAC does really well, and by the way, again, I'm not paid to say this. I'm just going to say this. I've been part of a lot of accelerators. There are a lot of good accelerators out there, but I think what's really unique about MTI APAC, and by the way, I'm very familiar with MTI US as well. With the Mullings Group in the US works with them too. But I've obviously had a huge bias towards Asia because I've spent 14 years of my career here. And look, APAC is fascinating, right? I mean, it's got 60 countries. You've got ever evolving regulatory, population, disease landscapes. I mean, it's light speed in terms of changes here. But that alone makes it really difficult to harmonize, right? I mean, what you do in China is vastly different from what you do in Japan, Korea, Australia. I mean, the list goes on. So as a founding medtech firm, you really want one platform that allows you to harmonize and access the world's largest GDP medtech driven growth. And so I think that's why a program like MTI APAC that really brings all these key markets together offers you that opportunity as a springboard, right? I mean, you could easily do an Australian accelerator, a Korean accelerator that'll give you those home market advantages. But the fact that MTI APAC does a really nice Singapore ecosystem, and the second aspect is you have tremendous access to the Singaporean resources, which by the way, I think are best in class, right? The Enterprise Development Board, A-Star, I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. A lot of those individuals are also involved in MTI APAC. So just the exposure, access, and last element being the alumni network. I'm a huge fan of MTI APAC, not just MTI APAC, but MTI US as well. The alum network is fantastic. So as a founder, tapping into companies who have gone through your journey before, getting such an A-class community is bar none. So I know I'm hyping it heavy, but I'm a big believer, obviously.
No, thank you so much for your support. We do have one question, maybe before we end. And I think the question maybe is relevant to you, AJ, and that's essentially maybe what kind of feedback does so the question is, if I get selected to pitch, for example, in Singapore, right? What kind of feedback can I expect from maybe you if you chose to judge my startup itself?
Yeah, look, I think that really depends, right? Depending on now, if there's two in-person pitches. Obviously, there's the front-end pitch where we're sort of having you intake into the program, and then there's obviously the in-person pitch towards the end of the program.
Right.
But I think one of the first things we look for is how much have you evolved from that intake to that final, right? How well has your business strategy, your story, your elements of execution, how well has that refined over the course of the program? Because that's, if you're on the latter end, we're looking for a much higher level of quality. I think the second thing I would say is that passion needs to be consistent, but if anything, it needs to be bigger towards the end of it, because at that point, you're really, really on stage going, this is why you should fund me, right? And lastly, I think I would just harp on this constantly. The real quality of your business strategy needs to come through. It needs to be crisp. It needs to be precise, because at the end of the day, you have something like 7 minutes to share your story and to be convincing. And so if you don't pass the 3 a.m. test, where I wake you up in the middle of the night and your story clearly, even down to pricing, reimbursement, again, you don't have to be 100% correct, but you have to do the diligence to prove what you're saying, right? So it's the quality of the belief. So I think those are the 3 things that I would give in terms of feedback.
And I think it very nicely segments to the second question that I received. And that's essentially, who should I send to pitch itself? And I think you alluded to that quite nicely as well. So at MedTech Innovator, during the judging phase, we do evaluate on a particular unique question, which is, do you feel that or does the judge feel that you are coachable, right? And I think the pitch or the person pitching is essentially the face and the mouth of the business. So AJ, as a very experienced judge, who would you recommend that our startups send to pitch?
Look, my half joking answer is I would send the most passionate person in your company to pitch. But the other answer, maybe the brochure answer is, look, I always look for the CEO. My first view is, why isn't the CEO pitching? And especially if it's a founding CEO, I'm especially looking for, why did you found this company and why aren't you on stage selling me this company? But there are always situations where the CEO or the founding CEO can't be there. But I would highly recommend you choose someone who is incredibly passionate about the story and also really understands the cohesiveness of the story. For example, one of the companies that we saw on stage sent their key commercial officer. And he, just like the founder, believes in the company, has been part of the company for a long time. So imbibes the essence of that passion, right? So those are my kind of filters. Like definitely don't just send someone just to fill that spot. Like, you need to have someone who's a very passionate representative, but also understands the business acumen, because that's where it's going to fall apart if you don't know the business story.
Yeah, and I think this person will also serve as that, I think, initial first impression that the company gives to the wide range of judges that we have there. So any pitching company that comes down will see between 10 to 18 judges physically at the judging venue itself. And many of these will include very senior professionals in the industry. And I think you really want to put your best foot forward, right? Because that initial conversation with like AJ or Hospital Group or Johnson and Johnson, if you don't do that well, it's very difficult to have that conversation again. And I think that's where OCO Labs did very well, right? They left a very good impression. I remember, I think you saw them in 2024, and you saw them again in 2025. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, actually many of our judges remember the companies they saw the previous years, right? And they choose you guys again to see where you have developed, like what AJ has mentioned, from previous years. And are you able to articulate, I think, the additional value that you're bringing to the table and why you should be selected as well. So I definitely echo what AJ has mentioned. If you can't send your CEO, send someone the most passionate person in your team that really knows his or her stuff, to really put that best foot forward and leave good impressions. And I think more importantly as well, gain these new connections with our judges. I think it's very uncommon. You get such a huge pool of relevant judges to what you're doing. And these people, you never know, may end up helping you in one way or another down that road itself. All right. If there are no other questions, AJ, any final comments?
No, Glenn and Frederick, thank you so much. I love being part of this program, and you continue to invite me to various opportunities to share, why we all are passionate about this program. So I appreciate the opportunity once again.
No, thank you so much, AJ, for joining us, for judging and for mentoring our companies and giving them really, really good advice. And I think the hard truth when it matters the most. And of course, thank you so much, Oliver from Perth Biodesign, for joining us today as well. We look forward to receiving applications from other good companies like Pretech Devices in your network as well. And this is a final call to all our attendees for this information session today. Please start your application early. Do not wait until 31st of November or 30th of November to start. You will find yourself very hard pressed to finish it on time. And if you have any questions, I think feel free to reach out to us at apacsupport@medtechinnovator.org. I think on behalf of MedTech Innovator, our partners, speakers, and our team, thank you so much for attending our information session today, and have a good rest of the week. Thank you. Bye-bye.